Hey legends, welcome to another episode of the Virtus Performance Podcast. We have a very exciting guest for you guys today, a very interesting conversation and hopefully the beginning of a lot more very interesting conversations. Before we kind of get stuck into that, I'd like to thank all you guys for listening. It's been a pleasure to see the downloads kind of continue to grow and to see all of the feedback that we get, both positive and negative. It's awesome to be able to have dialogue with you guys around what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear, what you get a lot out of, and kind of where you guys see value. So thank you for that. If you have been enjoying the podcast, please share, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Leave a review, pump our tires up. You know the drill. Today's episode is with a man from Venice in California. We first kind of got wind of what he was doing maybe about 9-10 months ago. Lucky enough to be on a video call with him where he talked about organizational culture and leadership, and he kind of had us hooked ever since. So we've been following him on Instagram, on his blogs, kind of diving into a little bit of what he had to say, and we were lucky enough to take a big chunk of the team up to Sydney a couple of weeks ago for the Hold the Standard Summit. And then a couple of days later, we were lucky enough to catch up with Logan Gelbrich for a podcast. So today's episode is with Logan. We kind of dove into what he does but more so why he does it and how he does it, and spoke about the important conversations that need to be had around culture and development and adaptation, and I guess challenges, and how we actually overcome these challenges and how we do it in a group, as a team, as a collective, so that we can all make the world a better place. So yeah, you'll get a much better idea of who Logan is and what he's about over the next hour or so. Unfortunately, the mic did pick up a little bit more background noise than we were hoping. We're in a little bit of a louder space than we'd planned, but all is well. You can still hear the conversation, and I'm sure the message will still get through. If there's any sound engineers out there that know how to get rid of background noise, that'd be great. But otherwise, just think of it as a little bit of ambience. Without further ado, let's dive in. Here's Logan. My personal and business goal is to be just a little bit better every day. I believe everyone, especially normal people, have a story to tell. The Virtus podcast exists to help us all find small ways of consistent improvement by discussing the journey and experiences of each of our guests. Logan, welcome to the podcast.
I'm pumped.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I don't know if I've ever had like a follow-up conversation, not that we'll talk about this, but a follow-up conversation with people immediately after the summit like this, and so seeing you guys like your ears peeled back.
Yeah,
that's right. You know,
it's been an intense weekend, and I'm sure we'll dive into kind of what we touched on, but this is a cool feeling because we've kind of been fanboying a little bit for the last 9 months or so since we started following you, and it's cool to be in the same room. Instagram is a wonderful thing. It
totally is. I appreciate the hell out of it
most of the time.
Yeah, I mean it gets a bad rap, I think, but the fanboy thing is mutual. You know, like it's a trip for me to get on a plane and go somewhere, and then bring the human to this like connection that's there. You know what I mean? I'm feeling the same thing. It's like made real at that point. You know? Yeah,
that's true. Well, the way we kick off the podcast, first question for you: what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Well, I have this thing with determinism, and so I'm quite allergic. And And so I would say curiosity is what gets me out of bed in the morning. Because if there was no mystery or uncertainty or something to be curious about, then we would kind of already know how things would go,
Yeah.
So that just blessing of uncertainty and me being curious about it, I think is what gets me out of bed.
That's interesting. But you seek it out, right? Like it's not something that you just wake up and the curiosity and the uncertainty comes to you. Because a lot of people, this is probably me pigeonholing a little bit, but a lot of people kind of set up their bandwidth and their walls, and they kind of put their blinders on and just live their regular life. But you kind of seek it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sides to this coin, because life will dish you a heavy dose of uncertainty regardless of your framework. Even the most risk-adverse people will be introduced to this uncertainty, whether they're seeking it or not. But yeah, I think my personal framework includes a lot of latitude, we'll say. And again, that goes back to just my own personal thing with certainty or like determinism.
Yeah.
Like if you could tell me what my life would be, in a definite way, then I don't really see a lot of fun in doing it at that point. But yeah, uncertainty is not a me thing.
It's a life thing.
So it's like, do you think you're prepared for that uncertainty?
I don't think anybody's prepared for it. I mean, and part of, there's a conversation in like the CrossFit world, for example, about like being prepared for the unknown and unknowable. They talk about that a lot, right? And you can do things to allegedly prepare you in the best way possible, but that's part of the characteristic of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Is that there's no preparing for a test that you don't know the questions for. So, like in an absolute sense, I'm not prepared for uncertainty at all. But I think we all, some more effective than others, we all are doing some things to sort of manage that uncertainty.
Try and move the needle as close as we can to whatever that thing is.
Yeah, and uncertainty is such a big idea. It's a big general thing. Luckily, if we care to pay attention, I think there's this beautiful element of skill transfer, to steal language from Coach Powley. If the uncertainty that I'll face in my life and the uncertainty that you will face in your life can't be, confined or known, maybe, just maybe, we can, attack some specific things with general implications, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe you can go about a ballet practice that would inform, how you would navigate the waters of, let's say, motherhood, right? Like these things seemingly have nothing to do with each other, but showing up and being disciplined and having attention to detail. These are ballet things and these are motherhood things.
It's universal.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of trying to like mimic life. There's the whole like sport-specific training thing. It's like, you know what that is? It's playing the sport. Okay, so it's like in baseball, you don't just have like a baseball bat with like bands attached to it and like get ready for specifically baseball. You do some generalized things to develop yourself, and then you apply them specifically.
Outside, I guess, what you do, who is Logan Gelbrich, and how do you, I guess, explain that to people that may not have met you before, which is probably a lot of our audience?
Yeah, I also don't feel very tethered to what I do, because in my view they're just vehicles to sort of, again, play with this curiosity and learn about myself. So
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm a student. I feel very, I step in and take pride to the role of teacher, but I think things get weird when you start claiming teacher.
Like labeling it as that's what you are.
Yeah, it's a little bit could have to do with what we spoke about all weekend, which is that if you're the teacher with the lesson, then this is a generalization, but that sort of sets the stage for playing defense for that lesson and trying to confirm and reinforce those truths. But if you're a student, then you can also be a teacher, and you have the optionality of progressing and evolving yourself. So, and if I was going to take the balcony view on who I am, I would say I'm a student of myself or life.
To give some context, we participated in your Hold the Stand summit on the weekend, and you spoke a bit about seeking disconfirming information and looking at yourself in the mirror. What do you see in the mirror?
I see a super green young man who is trying to figure it out. If I'm going to give myself a little more credit than that, I do see specifically a young man who is willing to do things that a lot of people around me I observe are not willing to do, in terms of looking in that mirror and doing the work and sort of seeking mastery, full well knowing that characteristically seeking mastery is a road just paved with disappointment and failure.
Yeah.
Because the alternative, and it's a popular one, seems like a charade. It's like, okay, I don't like how failure feels, so I'm going to avoid it, which is a lie, because those roads, again, we started this whole podcast talking about uncertainty. Those roads are not certain either. So on paper it feels like you can skirt the system, but to me it's like there's a bunch of failure and disappointment in one direction and a bunch of failure and disappointment in another direction. Only one of those options has the upside of actually doing something remarkable, and that way it doesn't seem like there's a choice. So it's kind of how I look at it.
For the people, I guess it's your being the student, you're learning, and then teaching what you're learning, but to steal a little bit from your book, or what it's called, and going right, how do you, it's kind of the having two thoughts in my head at the same time, but you can't really or you can't at all change what other people think or how they act and what they do, right?
Yeah.
That's on them, but at the same time you've kind of got the way I see it, you've got the golden goose to a point, because you've seen the other side, or you're working towards the other side and you're looking to the other side. So how do you help, if people are at those crossroads, direct them to going right? Do they have to desire it themselves, or are there ways that you can kind of ask the question of them?
Well, there's a super meta way to answer this question, because regardless of whether I am sort of trying to semi-forcibly guide you to a thing,
yep, or
you are already pursuing it yourself, the process specifically of going right, as outlined in the book, must begin with curiosity, because curiosity is the starting point for what could become commitment. And in order to go right, or to pursue your peak expression, which is what this little made-up phrase is for, what we know about these people is that they understand commitment on a level that could not be understood any other way. Okay. And then this is like there's a cascade into a bunch of other highly transferable skills because you've committed to something in this highly powerful way. You put yourself in position for the next step of going right, which is to develop a large body of deep work. No one has skipped that step in creating asymmetrical value and in seeking mastery. Once you commit to something and you develop this large body of deep work, you're then fit for the thing that's coming our way, which is uncertainty and failure.
Yeah.
Right? If you were going to be met with some adversity, would you rather be highly developed and prepared for that, or would you rather be an amateur, right? And so the obvious answer is that those who have developed a large body of deep work then are more fit for the challenge. Yeah? And seeking these sort of difficult challenges and being quite prepared for them is a sweet spot that we sort of know about, and it's the peak human expression, which is flow.
Yeah.
Going right sets the stage for this. Now, the last thing that sort of going right affords you is this, basic idea that we talked about already as well, which is these are all highly transferable skills. So if you change course or change your mind or what going right means for you evolves, ta-da, it's okay. You don't have to start over again. You are actually more prepared for the next thing, and that creates the thing. Well, everything that I just sort of explained right there begins with this little seed of curiosity. Okay, so you have to on your own fruition, whether someone introduces it to you or you introduce it to yourself, you must be curious about the thing. And so, I can share this with 1 million people, and I will.
But there's got to be curiosity.
But they need to be genuinely curious, right? And you can stress test this by thinking about commitment. I was joking back home and I was explaining this to somebody, and it's sort of like, if I just decided in this meeting room right now, I'm like, guess what, guys, we're committing to something, and I mean really committing. You know what that thing is? It's ceramics. We're taking it to the mountain, right? We are going to be making all sorts of pots, pottery. It's going to be both outdoor and indoor. Okay,
you have my attention,
right? I mean, there's no way that unless there was a coincidence that you became actually curious about this, that you could commit. It would be a fake commitment.
So if we rewind back to Saturday morning, 10 a.m., you've got 20 new faces in front of you.
Makes me want to throw up.
And it's how is it just a matter of, okay, guys, we're going to commit to this thing, which, as you said, most of us didn't know what we signed up, or all of us didn't know what we signed up to in its entirety. So how do you kind of shift that from we're going to commit to this thing and everyone kind of agreed to, I guess, the end of the weekend where we've spent 2 days kind of diving into content and trying to adapt and trying to learn and trying to kind of jump on the thing with how do you I don't know what word I'm looking for, express that to the group.
Or how do I solve that problem?
Solve the problem,
That's a good question, because it's something that I, on one hand, really worry about. In those moments in the beginning, I mean, as someone who is genuinely stressed and uncomfortable with the idea of speaking publicly to people, and I really care about the content of this thing. I care about teaching this summit more than I care about most anything in the world, and I feel a great deal of responsibility to deliver this message. On one hand, on the other hand, I'm sort of solving this with the same sort of framework that helped me get over crying my eyes out anytime I had to speak in front of people, which is that I'm going to be there with you guys. I'm just going to be in the room, and that this is not a recital Thank God. Those are the ones that really, like bawl my eyes out and wouldn't be able to finish the first sentence in school. It's not a recital. I actually get to be me in the room. Thank God. And that's how I sort of like let myself off the hook a little bit. Because what you don't know, I mean, we could ask you if you had a positive experience or not, or what you would grade the experience or something, but I'm just going to assume right now you had a positive experience. What you don't know is that I'm doing what I described in the high performance lecture. I'm doing that exact thing when I leave there each day, which is I am extremely dissatisfied with what I intended to deliver and what I actually deliver. So I'm like armchair quarterbacking my shit, right? Like, oh, you had that sweet example on the airplane and you didn't even mention it. And, like, you were unclear in this area. You didn't really answer this question in the way that you envisioned. Like, all of these internal things, like, but you guys don't know that.
Yeah.
You know? And so, it's the same sort of problem solving that any, I think, performer in anything is trying to do, which is like, oh my God, I'm about to do this thing and I want it to be perfect, and in the back of our minds we know it's not going to be perfect, but doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Well, no doubt in a couple of hours we'll probably reflect on this podcast and there'll be 400 questions we didn't ask.
Totally.
I didn't know answer that.
Oh my God, he thinks I'm an idiot.
I've specifically done no shortage of half a dozen podcasts that started with one question, and they had paper just like y'all do, and there are lots of questions on there, and we did not get to question number 2. You know, so I can empathize with that.
So question number 2 that I've got written down. Why should you give a shit?
Why should you give a shit? To me, that's a question of self-respect, because I think, and this is maybe just me placing my view of the world on there, but I think that apathy is disrespectful to self. I'm trying to say like universal truths off the cuff here. But okay, so now I'm trying to check that for truth. So, and I realize there's nuance here. We need to decide what matters for us.
Yeah.
And so when you asked the question, what I sort of heard was like, why should we give a shit about anything? And I'm not saying that you should give a shit about everything, but you should decide what matters, and you should really give a shit about that. Because to pretend like you don't care about the things that you actually care about is extremely self-sacrificing and disrespectful to self, I think.
Yeah, well, it is, and I guess that's everyone's own prerogative to decide what actually matters to them. And I think that first thing I think of is values. So what are the deep-seated values that you've kind of identified that you have? I guess it probably was shown a lot on the weekend, but I'm sure your answer is probably different to our perception.
Well, I can tell you specifically,
good.
Because I've done some work to discover what those values are.
Seem like that kind of person.
That's right. Well, it's actually really awkward to be 32 years old and someone asks you what your values are, and you'd be like, I don't know. And that was my answer, then. So my values are love, joy, freedom, growth, how do I not forget my can't remember my 5th. I got 4. And these are specific to me and specific to this season of my life. I think our values change and all that, but I think it's important to do something to drill down into what your values are, because if not, we can kind of solve the problem of that question by naming positively connotated things, right? And then they don't really have much meaning.
How did you, I guess, from 32 to 33, how did you identify what those values were? Was it just...
So, specifically in the context of therapy, and then specifically in the context of studying NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming.
Yeah.
I took a master practitioner course, it was like 16 days in Amsterdam. And there's some techniques to do that, and technical leadership. The specifics of how you go about that probably matter less than you just go about that. So I think it's important because I wasn't making a joke about other people. I was making a joke about myself. Like, it's fucking weird to be a grown man allegedly and be like, so what are your values? Like,
Do I actually care
I'm
about
gonna
it?
tell you. How much time you got? Honesty, true. But you just like go down the list of words that have positive meaning.
Yeah.
I can imagine that uncovering of what your values were was like liberating in a sort of sense, and question one, was it? Question two, was it also like scary, or was it, did it expose you?
Yeah, it was very scary. It was a scary time in my life. I was like highly depressed at that point, and we can rewind the tape if I said joy or not, because joy is one of them. If I didn't, that would be my fifth. I did. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It would be really ironic if I missed that one because that was my first core value. Specifically because I didn't have it. I didn't have any expression of it in my life. Furthermore, I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know how to do it. And I'm really clawing my way out of whatever that was, like, as of this hour, because, someone just asked me the other day, so what do you do for fun?
That was about 4 gins in on Saturday afternoon.
What do you do for fun? And I was like, I really don't know. And so that was like the confronting part of like this values elicitation, because when you feel sort of incongruent with yourself, and then you see sort of in a very straightforward way how specifically you aren't congruent with yourself or your needs, it is very confronting, but at least there's clarity there, Yeah. I think it's important. It's important to go into what that is, because, and this is part of where I could place, I don't want to say the blame, but that's really the only word I can kind of come up with. I can assign the explanation for a lot of this was it's really hard to get what you don't know that you need.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What you don't know.
Yeah. And so that was like the upside of kind of going down this rabbit hole.
Has it helped further define what your vision is, what the standard is?
Yeah, in a personal sense, right? What's ironic about this is I speak to people all over the world about like creating some sort of brand or a company or to do something remarkable with a group of people. Part of that little spiel is often to separate yourself from the thing that you're creating. So like I am not Deuce Gym or Strike Movement or any of these things. I participate and interact with these things, and they mean a lot to me, and I influence them and they influence me, but it's important to like not be those things. Well, the irony of the fact that I go around talking about that is I think I've done a good job of that part, but what I haven't done a good job of is letting both entities win and thrive, because it's so hard. You guys know it's so hard to create something from nothing in the world, that if you're like me and you're down for whatever, you will do anything to make that thing remarkable or make that thing win, including maybe forgetting yourself along the way.
Have you had times where you've struggled to differentiate between you and Deuce as two different entities? Because it's like, from a personal point of view, I resonate with that immensely. Being, you kind of, where's the line, or where's the gap?
In my mind, I haven't struggled in terms of that separation.
Yep.
The areas where I feel connected are less about an identity and more about a duty. Like, at what level and how specifically am I dutiful to this thing? And so, like, very simple, almost silly technical examples of this are just like when and how long I am at the physical place of that thing,
Yeah.
And so it's less for me of an identity thing and more of like, I think that the shadow of what makes me good at some things is that I will just work harder, and like I said before, just willing to do things that I think other people aren't sometimes. So the shadow of that is, well, there you are, sort of overly delivering in this one specific area, and yourself is not that area.
Yeah. One of the, I guess, theories or thing that we talk about at the gym occasionally is a third place. So you've got your home, your house, you've got your place of work, and then you've got a third place. Do you have a third place that you can go?
Yeah, I do. Well, there's two third places. So the local one is Manati's. It's a coffee shop. But it's not. It's a great place, and they do great things with coffee. But it's not super chill. It's in the thick of it in Venice Beach. So my personality, sometimes it's not the perfect one. So I have a little creative space up in Malibu where I go up and do my thing there. So that's
what do you find that gives you or allows you to experience?
For me, it's space. I am highly introverted. It's almost annoying how much I mention that. There's like a meme where it's like something about introverts, like if you're so introverted, why is it that you can't wait to tell everybody you're introverted or something like that? Yeah. But yeah, I've maxed out the scale on introversion in terms of the Myers-Briggs test.
Yeah.
So when I have space to be with myself and my thoughts, in my mind at least, I'm unstoppable. Like, I can do anything. I can do more better work longer than anyone I know. Now, the hard part with that is I'm in a industry or a job or a role where I have to interact with other people, and unfortunately or fortunately, as you maybe, have success in that role, you interact with more people. And so, the thing forces you to have structures in place to protect yourself, or it'll just kind of like eat you up, So that's what it gives me, is some space from the default mode, which is I am at service to whoever would like to take my time,
Yeah, 100%. Definitely resonate with that. We have a coffee shop next street over, which is an amazing place. Same kind of deal, but it just gets hectic sometimes, and there's no place to go inward. It's all communication and outwardness. So it's being able to find that place where you can hold space. And that term, I guess you use it in a couple of different ways. But what does it mean?
Holding space?
Yeah.
So, firstly, based on what we talked about in the summit, the size of the space you can hold is specifically sort of tethered to how big a container you are, or how large your conscious capacity is. Different, maybe more simple way to say that is like how many perspectives you can hold. And really holding space well is, in my opinion or my view, is about holding perspectives for all the sort of stakeholders involved, right? There's a little tool that we talk about around the gym that shows up in NLP a little bit, which is like the perceptual positions, right? So there's 5 of them. The first perceptual position is life through your own 2 eyes. It's the one that most people live in all the time. People who cannot hold space usually spend all their time there. There's a second perceptual position, so that is the position of the other. So if I had the ability to hold space for the other, I could then leave my consciousness and put myself into your shoes, and not just imagine looking back at me, but I would feel the way you feel. I'd be, experiencing what you're experiencing. I would have the background that you had. It's putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yep.
Third perceptual position is that of the observer, meaning an emotionless observer view, as if you're watching whatever scenario you're dealing with on like a movie screen.
Yep.
Or from the balcony. And this is sort of the true way to not be affected by the emotions of the situation. Really helpful for conflict. The fourth perceptual position is that of the group. So maybe it's a business, or it's a family, or it's a group of friends. Imagining that it has its own consciousness and needs and values and whatnot. And the fifth is source, and that's like the highest expression of self. Or if you're religious, it would be like God, or And so your ability to like see and include those considerations in any given moment then would be your ability to hold space. So there's a little bit of empathy happening there.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
How do you? You said that like, this industry that we're in, like obviously it is very interactive with others. Why this?
Why this industry?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So, specifically because of my own dissatisfaction with what I observed inside of this industry versus my experience of it through performance as a team sport athlete. Meaning, what I mean by that is, the curiosity that got me in the very beginning was built on this sort of gaping disparity between the multi-billion-dollar fitness industry thing and the actual thing. And of course I'm realizing that I'm biased when I say the actual thing, but as my friend Tate Fletcher likes to say, you can't argue with results. So until further notice, we'll call this thing with results the actual thing, and then the multi-billion-dollar industry with virtually no results not the thing.
Yeah, that's good.
And I get fired up on that still. I mean, that's not why I'm in it today, and I'll maybe sort of start to explain that, but that's how this all started.
Yeah.
Which is it still fires me up just now as I mention it, because I don't like scenarios where there isn't consequences or accountability. It's like a skin in the game thing. It feels like it feels like injustice, like people are getting away with murder. Because if there was an industry of that size, billions of dollars, the example I use all the time is like the automotive industry. Okay, if we accepted in that industry what we accept in the fitness industry, then it would be like completely normal for you to go out to your car to go to work every morning, and then just like 4 mornings out of 7 in the week, your car just wouldn't work. And we would just be like, cars, they just don't really work. And we wouldn't accept that there. There's this kind of screwed up vortex of the fitness industry that sets the stage for this, and I hate it because it allows this thing to perpetuate, and in my lifetime it probably will not change, which is that the consumer is more interested in being off the hook for the responsibility of their own health and wellness than actually having the health and wellness. Meaning, it's much easier for these people to just get together and reinforce that this thing is just hard and we can't really figure it out because last year it was paleo and this year it's keto, and we're all kind of trying to keep up, and everybody's fucking lying to each other. So you have this propped up authority figure in the health and fitness space that will take people's money because them giving money for weird products and services relinquishes them of their responsibility in their mind. Therefore, you can be a complete thief, moron, or otherwise, and not just survive but thrive in this thing. Okay, so that's why I got into the thing. I realized once being in it that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what the thing is what I mean. Just like baseball was for me, just like fitness is for me now, just like entrepreneurship is in a general way. It's sort of an environment to receive feedback. It's the opposite of a vacuum. Okay, and so when we put ourselves in these environments where we can get feedback, where a strike is a strike and a ball is a ball, and there's a bottom line somewhere, and the weight on the bar is either higher or lower than your previous best. It's just information to facilitate development.
I've heard you explain it before. I've used it with pride. That like fitness is the flavor.
Yeah.
And like the meat and bones of it is development.
Yeah, it's like the flavor or the vehicle. It's like it's the reason for the conversation. And now the nuanced part of that is knowing that and agreeing with what we just said does not negate the specific deep dive into the fitness, right? Because here's what's at stake, and I'll use Carl Paoli again as the example, right? So Carl Paoli, in my opinion, best coach on the planet. He's having a conversation that no one else is having, no one else is holding space for. And his background is in gymnastics specifically, and he was a national champion in Spain, Olympic hopeful, and comes out on the other side as a very influential, successful, globe-trotting coach talking about gymnastics, except if you follow him closely, not only can he do the gymnastics thing justice at the highest level, he can also tell you it's not about the gymnastics. Right? But if you're just an asshole who's never done anything on the street, you can't say it's not about the gymnastics. You have to go through the thing.
Gotta have the runs on the board.
Master it. Be in the arena. Come out on the other side and say it's just a vehicle to do the thing. Right?
Yeah.
You can't be a non-skin in the game, non-participatory, non-contributing talking head and just say it's not about the thing, man. You need a thing to learn that it's not about the thing.
Yeah. So that comes with, I guess, just experience and time and effort and sweat, tears, blood, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but specific experience to being on the hook, right? It's like the level at which you are ultimately responsible is going to equate the gravity of that understanding, I think, right? So again, my background was in baseball. I'm not even a baseball fan. I'm not going to even begin to tell you guys that other people should get into baseball or whatever, but the level at which I went through that specific arbitrary thing matters not because of the sport, but because of the implications of being on the hook. Your livelihood, whether you make rent or not depends on your performance in the thing, is a different type of conversation than if I played the same sport and just played like a rec league on the weekends, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about the thing, it's about the weight of responsibility inside of the thing. When you sign a lease of a business and take out a loan or empty your bank account for a thing, it increases the sort of weight and responsibility of that. Those lessons aren't available to you if you are without risk.
Yeah, I think of risks like that, I feel as though I was significantly more likely to take those risks when I didn't have anything to lose. And like I've been kind of one of my, improvement goals we talked about on the weekend is the ability to assess and take more risks, because I guess when I started, it was me and I started with a business partner, and it was us, and if we failed, then we're not losing anything, right? Because we didn't have anything to start with. So now that we're at the point where a bunch of people's livelihoods rest on this thing, and then we've got all these, we call it the Virtus family, all these clients and people that are relying on us to do our thing so that they can improve their lives. Like now, whenever I go try and make a big decision, I find it almost like I find that fear creeps in because there's so much more to lose. And if you have been through the same thing, or have you been through the same thing, and how have you been able to work through, just making that judgment call on trying to get to that next level?
Yeah, I think my answer begins with the general observation that we don't really understand risk very well to begin with as humans.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't really understand risk is because of how time works. So, and I can say this with a caveat of you being unique to, let's say, most people, because you generally are taking risks. But I think we don't understand it because we experience our own failures and shortcomings very closely. We know those very well. We remember them very well.
Feel them.
We actually downplay our own successes and upplay our failures, whereas we do the opposite with other people. So we generally play up the successes of others, and we don't really understand their failures very well. And that's because of how we experience time. When you go through your life, you're doing it chronologically, right? That's how I'm doing my life, at least. Okay.
Mostly.
Last year was 2018, right? Okay. This year 2019.
Correct.
Next year. Okay. Cool. Except, if you think about it, that's not really how you experience other people. Because by the time you come to recognize or appreciate a successful person or thing, that's like day one of your memory. Okay. And even if you were to really research and try to find out how hard they had it, you cannot unknow the fact that they are successful. That's how you found out about them in the first place. That's this sort of winner circle bias, right? And this skews our understanding, because now we see this deviation. It's like, well, when I try stuff, it's really hard, and like I fail a bunch, and it's like expensive, and it gets scary, and there's like rent to be due or whatever. But then there's these other people who like fly in their private airplanes, and they have crazy cars, and they make great art or whatever the thing is, right? And so that like sets us up on a trajectory of like inaccurate information. Classic example I talk about a lot is like Nike. Shoe Dog is a book worth reading.
It's incredible.
You read Shoe Dog. Just to summarize it, it's a complete shit show. And by the time you buy the book, you don't even need to buy the book. Everybody, the swoosh is one of the most recognizable brands on the planet. But what's unique is there are moments in Nike's history where as the reader that the consumer, or you didn't have to buy Nikes, a person in the world would evaluate Nike as a raging success because
Yeah.
it's on the podium of the Olympics, John McEnroe's wearing them, it's everywhere. What you don't know is in that exact moment, the whole thing is within moments of catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until they went public and, you know, the guy taps Phil Knight on the shoulder, he's like, hey, you're worth $250 million, congrats. Where he's just like, oh, really? You know?
Yeah.
And so this really skews our understanding of the thing. What this sort of comes down to is risk is everywhere. Why? Because of what we talked about yesterday, which is life is uncertain, period. In a lot of ways, the things that we believe are safest actually have a hidden, deeper, way more dangerous risk. The classic example, and this is half the reason why I wrote the book, is if you seek safety in your, let's say, career, what you do is you try to avoid all risk, and you find yourself 10, 20, 30 years down the road as an unremarkable contributor to a job that doesn't matter, with no asymmetrical skills or value, and the industry shifts, or you get fired, or you are then made redundant. And what you do is you come out on the other side completely unprepared for the world that you still live in, which is an uncertain world. And so, for me, the least risky thing you can do is continue to put yourself in a relative environment of growth, which means you have to continue to seek out the challenges, like we talked about all weekend, that will expose your blind spots, expose your weaknesses, etc.
Yeah, I think, and listening to Shoe Dog was one of the big kind of realizations that everyone feels like they're on the point of, and can be on the brink of failure at any time, and we don't see that. And a couple of months after that, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Joe and Henry Rollins, and like these are two of the most, from the outside in, the most epic humans on the planet, right? And they spent a good half an hour talking about the imposter syndrome and just both of them. And I kind of wasn't one of the, you understand it intuitively, you understand that everyone feels that way, but to actually hear them talking about it and to dive into it, and it kind of, it made me feel like I was doing okay. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you struggle with imposter syndrome sometimes, and how do you work through it, if so?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I flew to another continent, a bunch of people, allegedly as like some sort of leader in some sort of conversation. And,
did good.
It's all made up, Now, I think it's important and it's valuable, but I can't unknow that, everyone as well that I sort of respect as like a high performer deals with this thing, and it's personal experience and podcasts as well, and interviews and books, whatever, but everyone's sort of dealing with it. And I sort of wish that our generation, as we become quote unquote adults and like raise kids and things like this, do a better job of creating a more truthful reality around that. Because you kind of want to go back and like shake all these parents that you like grew up around, being like, you guys were all making this up. You made up everything. Like, you had nothing figured out. You guys were a complete shit show, and you pretended you weren't, and now I'm you, and I know for a fact it was a shit show.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like us as students, even though you're a student as well, but you kind of the teacher role for the weekend, we see you come in and explain these theories and how they work in experiments and actions and things like that, and we look at you and we're like, okay, this is someone on another level. It's an incredibly evolved human. And I guess my question to you is understanding that you're on another level that you've worked up towards, and whichever way you want to look at it, where do you now need to go to evolve to that next level and the next level?
It's a great question. It's It's funny because just like I just described, you are naturally biased towards playing me up, and then I'm naturally
of course,
playing me down.
Yeah.
Right? And so that dynamic is at play. Also, the edges that I'm exploring and the places I need to go are quite small in adjustments, because there's a certain point, and I think anyone who's an adult is sort of there, you can't see what you can't see. And so you're sort of looking for the next marker, and that by nature isn't going to be too far away from where you currently are. So to specifically answer your question, it doesn't look like anything too crazy, but just like it's a pain in the ass to put a kilo on your back squat at this point, it's hard to make like massive change to who you are as a person. So for me, I'm really working on understanding communication, setting expectation, and boundaries. Even though I talk about teams and communication and like all these things, and I feel like I understand them on a level that you were able to experience this weekend, I still make critical mistakes all the time. There's a natural thing that we're all exposed to, which is this sort of spiraling forward of complexity, right? Transcend and include, which means the container's got to get bigger, or you're going to be more and more in over your head. And so as I evolve, I have to hold space for way more complexity than I did before, and that includes other humans. And so one example, just to like not have the most general response to your question all the time, is I have this default belief that if I've communicated one thing someplace once, that I'm communicating it everywhere to everyone all the time, right? And so I have to remind myself that I'm not nearly as clear to my team as I believe that I am. That's a Napoleon quote that I think I butcher in Coach's Prep 101. I think I get it right in Coach Prep 101. I think I'm just going to butcher it right now, which is your orders must not be easy to understand. They must be impossible to misunderstand. That's like a cool little goal. When you're dealing with other people, that one is a challenge that I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head fuck.
So it's like a thing that I try and stay true to is like, it's not what is said, but it's how it's heard.
Yeah.
And that's like a big part of the communication space talk. It's sort of an extension of that. What was the last thing you changed your mind on as part of your evolution?
That's my favorite question.
Such a good question.
I changed my mind on a lot of things. I'm trying to think of the last thing that I've changed my mind on.
Last impactful thing.
I mean, this is sort of like a general thing, but with major implications, which is a big part of my own development has been changing my mind about my perception of the world. Because as open-minded and curious and whatever other cool words you want to attach to yourself that you think you are seeing the world through a very biased, inaccurate perspective. And as you move through that stage 4 thing where you're like, Johnny, I have my method and my custom perfect view principles on things, what that stage fails to see is that you are looking through a custom pair of glasses.
Yeah.
And your custom pair of glasses are specifically as inaccurate as everyone else's. And so to get enough distance from that is a pretty edgy place that I've gone in the last couple years, which is, it's sort of like assuming positive intent on steroids, right? Like that's a thing to like, especially in conflict, like assume positive intent on someone else. Like, not just assume positive intent, but everyone is literally doing what they think is right.
Yeah. Including
when you're motherfucking them because they have failed to meet the standard or whatever the case may be, right? Yeah. And that is a level of complexity that most people just rather not go towards. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm sort of interested in including that ability as I go forward. And so it's sort of like changing my mind about inclusion, because if you're not careful, you might begin to think that you're right and other people are wrong.
Looking like currently, if you were to look through your, I guess, bias glasses, at the world, would that paint a picture of optimism or pessimism from your point of view?
Well, that's funny. I believe that I'm quite optimistic, extremely optimistic about the upside of human potential, my potential, the potential of others. In an absolute sense, I think I'm intentionally pessimistic about how that plays out. But here's the thing, and this is pretty gnarly, and it's quite liberating. And you can even attach this to the whole nature versus nurture argument, which is, you don't have to figure out whether it's nature or nurture, or you don't have to figure out what is the truth about this sort of expression of humanity, because it only pays to believe the nurture side. It only pays to believe that we have the upside. Yeah. Because even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter anyway, right? Yeah. And so we all ought to just assume that we can do everything, and that skills move in both directions forever, and to just get after it, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think, and one of the things I remember from the weekend was kind of on that. Is even if there's 1% of your life that you have control over, then it's a non-argument, it's a non-discussion.
Right, and you know, I learned these lessons playing this horrible sport where you fail and it's really confusing and you can't figure it out. But it was really a blessing, because I feel extremely incongruent with a lot of people in the world. The stage 4 judgmental side of me would say these are low performance motherfuckers, but you know, I've just never met someone who has managed the things inside their control so well that they could consider caring or complaining or speaking about or worrying about the things that are outside of their control. And so until I meet that person, I think it's sort of news to all of us to just get back to the things that are in our control, the process. And what's scary is if you don't opt into, like we said earlier, an environment with heavy consequences, with feedback, you'll never learn that lesson. It'll always be hypothetical, you know. But if you really go for it and try your best, like with the consequences of failing, you might actually learn one of the most important lessons of life, which is there are only some things inside your control, and that's where your attention should be. You know,
it's kind of like circle around to leadership. Like it's your choice whether you choose to focus on the things in your control or focus on the things that are out of your control. And an element of responsibility to yourself and to the people that you serve to choose the things that are in your control. Right? Why did you choose to take on the responsibility of this? Because it's a heavy burden, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have this very significant feeling that I am capable of so much, like more than I'll probably be able to accomplish in my time here. And I feel lucky to have that. But it is a blessing and a curse, because if I were to not opt into leadership and to sounds corny, but like give my total human best effort, I couldn't unknow that like I would know that I was taking advantage of this sort of opportunity, and it just feels disrespectful to myself and to whatever sort of higher powers out there. And I often wonder about other people's views, because I've never lived as someone else, of course, but I've tried to see what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes. And from what I hear, that makes me weird. Okay? So from what I hear, it's unique that I think I can do anything. And so the part of me who is trying to live inside of other people's shoes sometimes really wonders deep down if they really believe they can't do things, or if it feels convenient to believe that, because then they're not responsible for it. And I want to believe that everyone at some point in their life, this is also sort of why I wrote the book, I don't believe that you're born and live a life of any length and die and never ask yourself, what could I be, or what could I do? I mean, even the most unaware motherfucker has got to be doing laundry one day and be like, is this it for me? Yeah. I really believe everybody does that. Now, the question is, do they genuinely believe that they can, or that they're not capable, or that other people are somehow better than them, or something, Yeah. And I don't know. But I definitely know that there's likely a tendency for us to lie to ourselves about that, because it may seem scary.
This might be me trying to find a simple answer to an incredibly complex question. But in your research for the book, and as you kind of dove into it and created that thing, was there a personality trait, a line of questioning, or something that you identified allowed people to take that shift into, is this it for me, to actually going, I'm going to load up and dive into my peak expression? Yeah.
So it's in a not so secret way, this is also what the weekend was about, which is like pursuing your peak expression begins to look like continually putting yourself in the newest, most relative challenge for your own development. And what we know about that is that requires disconfirming information. So it definitely pays to be of the mindset or of the perspective that is open to seeking, ready, willing, and able to receive this disconfirming information. Because you sort of guarantee your underperformance by being resistant to that, right? So if your pride is such that you don't want to ever hear that you might be wrong, or that you have some sort of flaw, then what you're doing is you're sort of putting the nails in your own coffin of development. And so if there was a trait that would sort of yield the most growth results and the greatest opportunity to reach your potential, it would be those that elicit growth. So that would be the ones that are sort of both vulnerably willing to try and willing to look at the failure,
Yeah. can we get like halfway there and still lie to ourselves that we're trying though? Like in terms of mindset, there's like that fake growth mindset she talks about towards the end of the book.
Yeah, well, it's like the irony of the book, right? And it's sort of like what we talked about with these different stages. So in the summit, we talk about like evolutionary growth, and you're in a room full of type A individuals. The moment that you start listing a progression, like everybody's like, yeah, I'm in the progression. I'm the furthest along. I'm the best. So if you hand someone a book and say, hey, there's this thing called the growth mindset, and it really pays to have it, people that have this fake growth mindset are going to be like, well, if it's valuable externally, then I have that.
Yeah.
I think the way to answer your question is knowing it's difficult, or knowing any of the concepts that we just talked about doesn't really make it easier. Back home, these guys, the U.S. Navy SEALs, they get a lot of cred and notoriety for this training, this filtration process they have, which includes the world famous Hell Week, right? So it's like 5 days long, and you sleep like an hour and 15 minutes over the course of the 5 days, and these like weird naps that you can win, and you're wet and sandy the whole time, and it's just a place for attrition, like trying to break people so that they quit. And everyone knows that going in, and you could even have a transformative experience there and actually come to the realization that you are willing to suffer and even die without quitting on, say, day 3 of Hell Week, right? I mean, you're soaking wet, your skin is chafed off, you've been awake for 3 days, and you're just getting your ass kicked, and you still can't go to the instructor and say, I've realized it. This is how this goes. You keep me up for 3 more days, it's horrible, just like this, and then I just continue to not quit, and then I get my trident and I become a Navy SEAL. So since I figured that out, can you just hand me the thing now and we just wrap this thing up? It's like, no. You have to continue to over and over and over again make these decisions.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's funny, like, especially people that are in training, we know that ultimately, right? It's the reason why people who are good at this, like, almost in some ways fear their training, because they know exactly where the edge is, and they know what it feels like.
They know how much it hurts.
And they know how to go there, and they know that that's where they need to be. When it comes to like our life development, we somehow continue to tell ourselves that like we're gonna like figure something out, and then we're gonna be at like our edge, and we're gonna be chilling, or there's some sort of like finish line. And life will remind you that your edge is your edge, and it is hard and horrible and difficult, and if it wasn't those things, it wouldn't be your edge.
Yeah.
So there's this process of continually opting in. It's like, you mentioned leadership. That's what leadership is. It's not like hard in the beginning, like dog days of leadership, made it through, now I have a viable business. It's like, no, dude. You're choosing to like just hang out there at the horrible edgy part.
And it's always going to be hard. There's always, you're going to have good days, bad days, etc. But it's a matter of knowing that even at the end of Hell Week, there's going to be more challenges. Yeah, that's a cool thing. You obviously get a lot of your discipline and drive from intrinsically, right? Who are the people that you can kind of look up to extrinsically that are just doing cool shit that make you want to be a better version of you?
That's awesome. Yeah, this is another thing I realize is that whereas I am quite intrinsically, it's not even a matter of intrinsic and extrinsic, just internally oriented.
Yeah.
It's possible to be motivated both internally and externally, and have a different orientation. I sort of make sense of the world internally, whereas people that are twice as successful as me can orient themselves externally. And so that's my bias. However, I do sort of relentlessly seek out people that are inspiring to me surround myself with people who are also vulnerably going for it. Dr. Kara Miller, for sure, is inspiring. I'm very fortunate to spend time with people that I feel like I don't belong there. And in the last 3 years, there's probably been 100 times where in my head I've said out loud in my head, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And there's a unique group of people up in Malibu that I get to be around tangentially that includes like crazy cast of characters. Pat Riley, Hall of Fame basketball coach, Rick Rubin, music producer, Mike D from the Beastie Boys, like Laird Hamilton, Gabby Reese, and it's just it's less of a name drop deal, so I'll stop. But it's more of like what's the same. Because as someone who felt like an outsider in a group like that, you start to see how these people interact with one another. And you realize that this is not a matter of like celebrity hanging out with celebrity because those are the only people they can hang out with. It's no, these people need each other just as much as scared, non-contributing complainers need each other to feel safe, right? The people who are like too scared to try, so they hang out with other people who have also given up, and they tell each other it's okay. These people are like the savage version of that because they are on their edge doing shit that no one's ever done before, and they look across the room and, Josh Brolin, who's just like starred in 5 different superhero movies at age 43 or whatever the case may be, looks across the way and like connects eyes with Laird, who is going to go faster on a foil on a 50-foot wave next year than he did the year before, and they get that, and so we need sort of community in that way. Now, again, it's not about like celebrity or whatever, but like these are the types of people that just humble me and show you perspective. I think a lot of people can think small. There was a moment, another place where I was like, how did I get here, right? Would go on these trips to Fiji, this like little island where it's like one of the best surf breaks in the world. I don't surf, but like it's just a vacation, And it's our small group of the only people on the island, and I'm sitting there in this chair, and in front of me is Bob Hurley, who started Hurley, and he sold it to Nike for 9 figures or whatever. And he's the sweetest man and brilliant, hard-charging guy. And then behind him, sort of like blurry to my vision, is Larry Page's yacht from Google, which is like a moving city, right, with a staff like bigger than the number of people that are on the island or whatever. And he is laughing about the levels of that, and here I am in my little level, and so seeing perspective like that is huge. And if you ever feel like you're in a zone where you're like the big fish or the strongest person in the room or whatever, however you want to say it, it's like literally stunting your growth.
Yeah. Was that like an action that you took? You just kind of sat yourself down one day, I want to be part of this, or was it more of like a organic, like you were drawn to those people?
I don't think you get there if it was the former, right? I don't think you get invited if you're weirdly motivated like that. I think it's how you show up in the world, That's me trying to explain something that I'm grateful for and can't really understand. But, definitely people don't recognize the power of personal brand because you don't get the phone calls that you don't get. So you wouldn't have known what you missed. because you were an asshole in high school or whatever, right? But if you show up, this is something I realized after baseball. It's like it's not hard out here, in my opinion. After you sort of send it on something really difficult, like trying to play a professional sport or trying to do something, whatever it is that your lane is, because you get out in the real world and you realize that everyone is scared and everyone is playing small, and so that just to try your very best in the world is insanely unique and remarkable, because there's nothing really else unique about me, or I don't know. And so I don't know. That would be the only way I can explain it. Is there are people who are probably genetically attracted to that, because deep down we all want to explore that. And so when we see someone else doing it, we want to kind of be around it.
Yeah, I like that.
You're all in pursuit of excellence, and you're all showing up to the table, and that's half the battle, right? Just showing up, and from there you have the ethic to do your best.
Totally. And I feel like a douchebag because of the ridiculousness of those names and interactions, but I think it it lands. But another guy who I really look up to that's featured in the book, his name is Nicely Able, and he's not famous, but he is world class at what he does, and he makes coffee better than anybody on the planet. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a world latte art championship. Yeah, this dude people fly from all over the world to see him do his thing. And that's what I mean by excellence is by definition valuable and rare and attractive. And there are things that he's learned about making latte art that everyone learns about, seeking their edge, and oh, by the way, he has a job that is easy to make fun of. He's a barista, right? But he, as one who's the best in the world at what they does, he now is a multi-time business owner, and he is completely resistant to the fragility of ebbs and flows of losing jobs, and he is permanently valuable to this planet. How cool is that?
Yeah. If you asked him if it's about the latte art or not, he'd probably say it's not.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. You mentioned you were grateful for some of those people you mentioned. What else are you grateful for outside of that?
I'm grateful for my health. I think that's part of where this duty or guilt or whatever you want to call it comes from. It's I'm a perfectly able young person with nothing really to complain about. I've also seen and even for the first time a little bit experienced the fragility of mental health. I'm very grateful to have that now, and I don't know that. There's too much around. My life is insane. It's all made up. I've traveled all around the world talking to people about things that I think are important. I made a goal when I was really young to never make a resume, for example. Still got that going for me.
Good.
There's too much. You don't have enough gigabytes on your computer for my gratitude.
We've got a couple of questions to finish up, and
These are the hard ones.
sometimes the whole finishing up thing takes longer than the actual podcast, so we'll see how we go. But what are you proud of?
Man, I genuinely am proud of myself. I'm proud of what I've chosen to do with my life, considering the other options. I'm proud of my people at Deuce Gym. They're the best people in the world. I'm proud of the fact that thing exists. I'm proud of just trying to do the harder thing, I think.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
What are you most confident about?
I genuinely think I can do anything. And it's weird, like, I've become more and more comfortable sharing those things. Maybe it's just like the long form podcast situation I find myself in or whatever. I think it doesn't really pay to speak my mind in that way publicly, but I think it would shock people what I believe about myself in my own head, and I'm grateful for that confidence, because it's allowed me to try things that I don't know. It seems like it's hard for people to try their best.
Do you think people will be scared or shocked at what you think of yourself because it's not normal?
Yeah. Again, that goes back to what I said. Either it's not normal or other people are just lying. You know, like, I don't know why I think that. I've always thought that. You know, I really don't know. I have the best parents in the world. I mean, they probably have something to do with it. You know, but I mean, I remember being in elementary school, and it just didn't matter what I wanted to do. I didn't fear not being able to do it. You know, like, the joke I've said before is like, the only reason why I'm not an astronaut is because I didn't want to be one. You know, it's just like, I don't know. I've never thought of limitations like that. And I realized that either that's unique or other people are lying, but whatever it is, like, I lean on it heavy. You know?
Do you sometimes have those doubts that bubble up that you can't do something, and then is there a way that you squish them back down?
I think my relationship with failure is what frees me up. Like, because to be clear, I don't think that anything's going to be easy for me or that I'm, like, particularly good at something.
Yeah.
I just, like, am so down to fail that I figure eventually I'll just be able to do it, you know. And I think that was reinforced by the baseball thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime you try to do something the best in the world, especially something that's popular in your country and like millions of other people want to do it, you know, you start to look around and you're like, I probably shouldn't be able to do this. You know, I'm not like really fast, or like, you know, there's just not a lot of reasons for that. So the ace in the hole then becomes like just how kind of down you are, I guess. You know? Cool. And I generally feel okay with failing, not in like a loser way, like I you know, play to win, quote unquote, but like it doesn't derail me to fail, I guess, where I think maybe it derails people, or the fear of failure derails people.
Yeah,
it strikes me as you're someone who, even if you do fail, you don't see yourself as a loser.
No, yeah, for sure. And that, I mean, that goes back to the sort of the stoic thing, or the view of performance that we talked about. It's like, even if I was, it doesn't pay to think that.
Yeah.
You know, like, maybe I am, but like, there's a lot more upside in pretending I'm not. So like, let's just do that one.
Yeah. Then you win. You win regardless of.
Yeah, fuck. Maybe I am a loser.
Potentially.
We'll find out.
What are you most excited for?
Oh, I'm so excited for this book.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so excited. You want to know a secret about the book?
A bit.
This is cool. So, first of all, don't ever write one. So
scratch that. Stretch goal off.
I'm just kidding. Just do it. It'll just kick you in the teeth. So when you write a book, you don't have to, but every book that you've read that you've respected has been designed on the inside. So there's a designer that like makes the words fit in like a square and stuff. It's not like Word where you just like, it's all jagged and shit on the edge. I never really realized that.
Yeah.
I mean, I realized that like you do nuanced stuff with like how you do headings or whatever. I guess I figured someone did that. But anyway, it's this whole job of like making the thing or whatever. And so I wrote this big long book, and it was like, you know, almost 300 pages or whatever, and took it to the editor, and of course they like prevented me from ranting so much or being lengthy or whatever. So of course I knew that the edited version would come down in size. Yesterday I got an email from the interior designer. We're done. And I'm not going to tell you how many pages it was, but I was like, how many pages is it? And I wasn't asking for the vanity of like what you think.
How many they chopped off.
Yeah. But I have to ask to tell the exterior designer, because they then decide how wide the spine is or whatever.
Yeah.
And she told me the number, and I was like, fuck, really? And I literally told her to make it longer.
Just increase the fonts, please.
I don't know how she's gonna do it, but whatever. Whenever you read this book, you're like, this is a shorter book than this really is. I swear to God, I said that to her.
Just justify by saying you're just trying to allow people to hold space within the pages by adding more space within the pages.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, so anyway.
With its consolation, some of the most impactful books I read are less than 200 pages.
Yeah, like I think, you know, it'll be that or more.
Principles are pretty long though, so.
Principles was, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that's just a little humble insight to this process. That book means the world to me, and I was going to write it if no one read it, so I really don't care if you read it.
Well, you've got 2 here.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty little.
Cool.
Yeah, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is fun.
This is a lot of fun.
It's hard to do double hosts. You guys crushed it.
Make it work.
We've tried both. Yeah. Selfishly, I like it when it's just me, but
Killer segues, right?
it's good because if I'm like, fuck, what do I say? I just look at him and he goes, oh fuck, I'm gonna say something.
It's funny you say that. Back to you in the booth,
I guess I'd like giving you an opportunity for you to say whatever you want to say. Pump whatever you want to pump.
You know, I don't like speaking from like a place that sounds like a finish line or some sort of like pedestal, and I think podcasts can set the stage for that. You know, I think the thing I want to make clear is that just like you guys and everyone listening, we're all doing our best. You know, we really are. And if you sort of are discerning about who you spend your time with and what you do and what you accept in your life, that's sort of where the magic happens, you know, because it's not like a matter of like you're blowing it and like these guys are killing it. That's not really what it is. And so I think if everybody sort of heard that, they'd be able to do it up.
I like that.
And then I guess technical stuff, like if people are listening that are in our world of coaching and movement and all that, there's a lot of cool things education-wise online, and it's all, I guess, holdthestandard.com is the best place to go for that.
Beautiful. Selfishly, I have one more thing to ask for.
Yeah.
The most, I think, beneficial section of the weekend was the difference between adaptive change and technical change. Can you explain that to everyone who's listening? Because I think that was just mind-blowing for me on the weekend.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I too felt like we could have just stopped the weekend in 15 minutes in. So we opened the summit with this concept of differentiation, because this is actually what makes this seminar unique, in my opinion. And so explaining it is sort of just a meta way of sharing what's coming. Most seminars and educational opportunities are technical in nature, meaning you go to a place or you read a book or you listen to someone to get their information. Well, it's 2019, and that is the least important time in the history of humanity to get more information. And so we're in this zone where we kind of don't really know what to ask for or what we need. And that's because we don't know that there are two types of challenges there are technical challenges, which is a challenge of information, meaning the solutions to whatever problem that you have in a technical scenario can be solved with expertise. That means that there is someone out there that has the information or the solution to your problem. Even something as catastrophic as like having cancer or breaking your leg, or you have some sort of like financial trouble. These are all like very big time challenges for us, but there are people that have solutions, and they're doctors, and they are Google, and they are books, and whatever. Okay, well, the challenges that really give us trouble are not technical. The ones that we have a hard time getting over, and they are adaptive in nature, meaning that it would require adaptation to solve them, meaning the person who has the problem would need to become another person in order to solve these problems. In a collective sense, we have lots of adaptive challenges, from like global warming, right? Like there's no person, still to this day, that we can ask how to fix this thing.
Yeah.
There's people with ideas, whatever. The ethics of artificial intelligence. There's not just a guy you can ask how to do that.
Yeah.
Right? We're in over our heads here. And so this naturally sort of brings to the forefront that there's two types of leadership: technical leadership and adaptive leadership. We really screw ourselves up when we have adaptive challenges and we throw technical solutions at them. Okay, so in our world, there's a lot of coaches that think that they're like 1 or 2 seminars away from being the coach that they need to be.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is that they themselves need to evolve and be more capable between the ears, so to speak. It has nothing to do with the reps and sets. And so adaptive leadership then would be able to drive this type of evolution. And it sounds, I don't know, confusing, or you're wondering how it's happening. But there are ways. And it generally comes down to exposing that which is not in your field of view. It's in your blind spot. You cannot see what you cannot see. You don't know what you don't know, etc. And that is really what makes the summit unique. And when you leave there, you won't just have more information, which is fine. You'll have that, but you'll have this sort of like keys to driving, adaptive change. And if people listening are searching for, how artificial intelligence or like global warming has anything to do with them, the classic one is weight loss, right?
Yeah.
There's, in 2019, losing 20 pounds of fat should be a technical challenge that we can solve. There are a million ebooks and a million diets and a million macro programs, whatever, where 100% of people that have 20 pounds of extra fat can just go to a website and lose 20 pounds of fat. Okay, well, a lot of people that need to lose 20 pounds of fat know all the diets in the back of their hand, but they cannot do it. And this is how we know that a technical problem is now an adaptive. And so there's something about this person that they cannot see what is in their way about this thing. And what's not in their way is information.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because my big takeaway one of the takeaways from that was just that it's looking in the mirror and going, how am I the problem? How am I the bottleneck? How do I need to change and adapt to fix it?
Yeah, and it's not always that, but it's often that, because it would make sense that a lot of our blind spots are found there because of how unwilling we are to look there. If we were just looking there all the time, maybe our adaptive solutions would be somewhere else, but we definitely aren't looking there.
Definitely. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Finish.
Thank you very much.
That was awesome.
Appreciate it immensely.
Yeah, it's awesome.